Hello, this is Sudhakar Maparthi once again. Today I'm going to talk about how knowledge should be represented and how we can learn faster by reformatting the English text that we read. So we're going to use ChatGPT for this purpose and create some object relations and structure. So this is a very unusual way to read a textbook, but today you're going to see a new way of learning things. So let's see. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so before I go to ChatGPT and talk about it, uh, I want to draw some basic concepts here. So knowledge should be represented in terms of object connections. So what do I mean by that? The knowledge that we have in our brains is stored in the form of neurons. So if you think of these as neurons, and there are other neurons, all kinds of neurons, and there are connections between these neurons which form the knowledge base that we have. And I can say these are of one type of neurons, and these are all different types, other type of neurons. So when I look at this way, and then it becomes easy for me to classify things into different groups, you can say, and connect those uh, objects with one another. So I'm trying to make a mapping between neural connections in the brain and the object connections in the computer. Okay, so what's a practical example? Okay, for example, if I consider this as a bunch of users, and these users have these permissions, let's say, in a system, um, then each user represents an account in the system, and that particular user has these two permissions, and whatever this permission may be, and these are all permission objects. And if another user, let's say another user has the same permission, then we just have to link them up in this fashion. So if knowledge is represented in this type, in this way, then I only need to understand uh, the connections and the definition of each of these objects. So that's the basic premise. So I call this is as a C1, C2 diagrams. So assuming that this is a class 1 and this is class 2, and then we are connecting with some data. This is some specific data. So user 1, user 2, user 3, permission 1, permission 2, like that. So now let's go and see how I can represent these objects. So each of these objects, I'm going to consider them as JSON objects for now, but it's much more. It's an object concept for people who are already familiar with object-oriented programming or development. So this is pretty obvious. And for non-technical people, so consider this as a introduction to the object world. Anyway, so let me go back and take some examples in ChatGPT and convert some text into objects and then show the relationships. So let me clear this. Okay, here I created a few examples. Let's see. Okay, all right. So I said create a new JSON object that captures the essence of the following text. So I took AWS IAM service. Uh, no, this is AWS STS uh, service, and then I copy pasted and I asked it to create a JSON object. So now you're looking at this English text paragraph, and then you're looking at this JSON object that it created from that. And now, now if I'm following this, uh, what I understand from this is, okay, there are some endpoints, STS endpoints, and there are regional endpoints and global endpoints. And regional endpoints, valid regions are all regions, and global endpoints, the ones that the user enabled, regions enabled by default, are allowed in these STS endpoints. Basically, if you read this, whatever you understand is the same essence, is for just reformatted here. Okay, so now it has this like key value pairs type of structure, and each of these represents that dot that I was referring earlier. So if I have to draw this in that fashion, so this is my one AWS STS endpoints, and in that I have these recommendations. These are recommendation. So this is the recommendation, and these are valid regions. So from here, not from here, okay. From here, I have that connection. So like this, there's a graph that can be generated through a program, using this text. But right now I'm just drawing this. So part of the crowdsourced AI project is to take any information, convert into a structured object like this, and represent it graphically. And then by looking at the graph and also the object, uh, we should be able to grasp what's going on. So what you are encoding in your brain at this point is the relationship between this AWS STS endpoints and regional STS endpoints and global STS endpoint. Whatever the thing that you're trying to read and understand. So let me take a few more examples that I generated. So this is another paragraph I just put. So AWS security service purpose. So there are some purposes for security token service. So I can add additional data if I want to. So this is another example, AWS identity access management. And I just copy pasted from documentation from IAM here. I just copy pasted some of this text from here. And then I created these JSONs. So this is another one. A root user, you have an identity and you have an access method, some reference and references. So some of the properties, you can simply ignore, for getting an abstract high level idea. And then when you dwell inside, um, into each of these objects, then you would be able to explore much more details. So the idea is to represent things very abstract way. So this is anything you can call it. So for example, I can say these are EC2 instances. Okay. And then these are security groups. Security groups. And then I can say this EC2 instance uses this security group. What is a security group? It doesn't matter. Just the word security group, how it operates, how it is enforced, and all that. It's a irrelevant thing at this point, because you are dealing at very abstract, high level conceptual understanding. So, and when you want to understand about security group, then we will focus on that particular object, and then we will try to figure out what that means in much more expanded way. So 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 all we want to say is here, security groups are used to control the access to EC2. I just took a different example, not the one that I just created here. But you get the idea. So we will expand like this all the concepts of AWS, and we will recreate the English text using ChatGPT, and whatever it gives, it's as a first cut. That's good. It's a decent start, and then on top of it, we will modify, update, and then put the English text and the object structure and the relationships, so that when you read one time, you may read the English text, and a second time, you just want to observe the important points like a notes type of thing. So my goal here is to reformat the knowledge in objects and the relations between all those objects, rather than the brain trying to parse the English text. That parsing done by the brain is done by GPT, and then it kind of gives the essence of what the author is trying to say. So we're going to do in the next series of videos. We are going to explore from my side AWS, but anybody who wants to do this way, I would love to hear from you. We can transfer knowledge in this once it is reformatted in this way. We can transfer knowledge much faster to folks who are trying to grasp uh, in the projects. So when you bring in somebody into a project, this is if you give them this kind of documentation, this kind of workbook, then probably they will be able to uh, get the knowledge much faster. Anyway, I don't want to repeat again. Let's see if I have some more examples here. I think created one more. This is AWS permissions. Different permissions can be granted to different users, and an example. Okay, fine. Just looking at these three words: AWS permissions, description, and example. I may read just once, and then I ignore a lot of the things. I don't need to understand all these other things. All I need to understand is, okay, there is some permissions, and that I need to understand. But when I go and explore more on that, then I will understand in detail that particular object. When I am understanding permission object, I don't want to deal with all the other things of AWS. So so here I just reformatted this text about MFA. So there's a two-factor authentication. There's a and some references. I will just simply ignore, this reference is all, it's okay. If I'm interested, I can, but the essence is this. Okay, there is something called two-factor authentication, extra security measure that requires a password or access key and a code from a specially configured device to work with your account. So what is ABAC? Attribute based access control. This is again, I copy pasted, and then it said, okay, attribute based access control description, which is applied in, it can be attached to resources. There are two types of access controls, which we will go in and when we come to those topics. But you get the idea. So here today, I just want to say you can take a paragraph, convert that into some sort of a JSON object, simple with some properties, and then by simply looking at these properties, you can think of these properties as classes. The circles that I drew, circles, those are, and then the dots represent the values. And the hierarchy here, it looks like an hierarchy, but I want to say those are connections. Okay, this is connected to that, so that's the context. So that's what I want you to take from today's video. All right, I'm looking forward. Please get in touch with me. I'm excited to create a new way of learning things and learn fast. And this is how I'm going to teach the machine, because this object is an intelligent object, smart object, and if I can store it in the database and then I can manipulate it, I can do all kinds of things once it is structured in this fashion. So which you will be seeing in my future videos. All right, good luck, and we will see you in the next video.